Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bärenzung. I'm a consultant in cybersecurity and I own my own company, 0x70. So first I would like to thank you, CLUSIS, and for the Visionary Day opportunity to do a presentation regarding supplier management. So let me start with a quick introduction on myself. I'm working already since more than 30 years and I'm since 2014 in cybersecurity. And why I'm here today is that because since more than 2.5 years now, I'm working for a private bank here in Geneva, taking in particular of supplier management. I have an international experience, and I worked in many countries, and I did also a lot of multicultural team management. And just a remark, because someone make me the difference, make me the note one time, my name is not James Bond 007, okay? So why did I choose 0x60 as a company name? In fact, it's quite strange, people might think. 0x70 is in fact the hexadecimal version of 112, which, as some of you know, is the emergency number for Europe, but also in other countries around the world. So what does 112? First thing, they listen to your needs. After they evaluate your risk, they provide you with the right service. They send you a psychologist or the firefighting, depending the situation. And finally, last but not least, they do coordinate the response team. And that's what I'm doing as part of my mission. Let me start with a story about a US casino, which in fact happened in 2016. This casino has a nice aquarium in their facilities. In order to facilitate the operation, they implemented a sensor, a connected sensor, to verify the temperature of the water, the pH, and let's say more generally, the quality of the water. This sensor was connected to the IT infrastructure, and people did start thinking about security because they implemented a secured Wi-Fi, and on top of it, they even implemented a VPN. Unfortunately, it was not so secure, and a cyber criminal was able to get into this network. And once in, he started to do a scanning of the infrastructure. Without surprise, I would say, because it's the case in most companies, he did find some vulnerabilities, which he exploited and was able from there to extract 10 gigabytes of data, which he sent to Finland. So the message here I would like to pass is first, is that as we know, the stronger security is your weakest link. And then also there is an increase of the threats with the Internet of Things and connected devices. Why taking care of third parties? The first thing is that a regulator may ask to do that. In Europe, as you know, the GDPR is now enforced, so you have to comply with it. If you are in the financial sector, at the European level or the Swiss level, you have the FINMA, you have the European Bank Authority, which requires you to do the proper supplier evaluation. Some of you are also planning, or may in fact might be in the process of doing their digital transformation, and they would like to secure it. So they have to take care of their third party, including the potential cloud providers. Last but not least, some companies have already started security governance, but they would like to improve and take in account all these outsourcing aspects. So some people might say third-party risk. No, I'm not aware of that. I'm sorry, I never heard about it. I mean, it's not possible to say that anymore. Every day you have your news of hacking, data breach, which are related to third parties. Recently, even ProtonMail, which is a Swiss company, suffered from an attack on one of the certificate providers and was not able to provide the services. Fortunately, it did put in place a workaround solution. At the end, ProtonMail decided to change of supplier, going to Let's Encrypt. Even yesterday, in the Bilan magazine, there was an article regarding bank situation in terms of digital transformation in Switzerland. And in fact, in the article, it was mentioned that 58% of the people the manager we were interviewing, were saying that security was a key point to take in account as part of their digital transformation. So let me start by giving a basic security concept for the one who are not familiar with it. What we want to do with security is to secure our crown jewels. So what I mean by crown jewels are critical assets, sensitive data. How do we do that? In the cybersecurity, we define the CIA triad. CIA standing for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. How do you do that? You have different domains where it can be applied, of course cybersecurity, but also physical security, and last but not least, business continuity. How do you do that? You have three axes again: people, processes, and tools. Note this is also valid in terms of cloud usage. So let's go over the outsourcing lifecycle and how you can manage security in the end-to-end process. In fact, it starts from the beginning. As soon as someone from the business is thinking of outsourcing a service, you know already the type of data which will be used and who will have access to it. So you can start evaluating the potential risk of outsourcing the service. One step further, once you go into the request for information or request for proposal steps, you can start asking security requirements to your potential suppliers. Once you have a shortlist, you can then go into the details with them and get additional information. Finally, when you have decided which one will be your third party, your selected third party, you need to manage security at the contractual level. So you can put security appendings, you must work on the data processing agreement, you need to work on business continuity, and you need also to work on the exit plan, as we will discuss later on. During the deployment, you must ensure that the solution which is in place is secure on a network, software, and hardware point of view. During the acceptance test, you must ensure that you do the proper security testing. During the maintenance and support phase, you need to monitor your supplier in terms of security posture, and also also when they are doing the changes on their side. Okay. Typically, if a supplier is moving from its own infrastructure moving to cloud, it should be discussed before with the supplier. And potentially, you might decide to change of supplier, and during the exit plan, you need to ensure that your data are properly destroyed. Okay, what you have to do first is to take care of people and to raise their security awareness. How do you do that? You discuss with your colleagues. It can be the purchase department to start, the legal department, the IT, and any people, business of course, any people who might be involved in the outsourcing process. It might also occur that you have to raise awareness of your own supplier. It happens to me for fintech startup, but also for major, let's say, companies who are already structured, but are always interested to get more information about security evaluation. So the first step in this security evaluation is to evaluate the risk. To do that, you must know what you are protecting. It can be your customer list, your price list, your production line infrastructure. You must also know who will have access to it and how they will have access to it. Will it be an interface which is available on the internet, a web portal, an API, through SFTP, and so on? There are many ways of accessing sensitive information and assets. Now, regarding the risk evaluation, we must remember that each company has its own risk appetite, and the industry has its own each industry has its own specificities. Some of you may have to do such evaluation on a recurrent manner, and it can be quite painful. In order to facilitate to job, I strongly recommend to use automated tool or semi-automated tools. You have to define a methodology, and use graphical interface, radars, to evaluate the potential risk. Ideally, you can build your own magic formula with taking into account the different parameters, which will give you at the end the risk level and consequently trigger the security evaluation of the supplier after. How do you evaluate your third-party security, but also their own subcontractors ones? Each risk level adds up security requirements. If you don't have something very sensitive to protect, the security requirement must be low. However, if you want to protect your full customer database, then the security measure should be very strict. How do you evaluate this security posture? The first thing is that you can simply rely on the third-party standard documentation. People will provide you with ISO certificate, ISAE, SOC 2, PCI DSS, DPA, and so on. So that's the first thing. Now, some people might not have that, or you might not find sufficient information in the document they provide you, so you might decide to build your own questionnaire. Something also I'm very pushing is also to use industry standard, because it facilitates the job of everyone. It's a win-win situation. Once you decide with your what I call frenemies, the security requirement you want to ask to your supplier, then it's a win-win situation, because you will have the supplier will take less time to answer to all companies, and on your side, you know it's standard. You know you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So, for example, there are some. I give here some examples. The ISF, the Cloud Security Alliance, and in the media industry, the EBU has done such, I would say, industry checklist. Once you collected the information, you must visualize it. I'm telling in visualize because sometimes the documentation can be very heavy, more than 300 pages, and you might be able to point out quickly where are the pain points. What I'm doing myself, I'm using a radar. For example, this one is based on the Internet Security Forum framework, and for each domain, you will have the risk level. And from this graph, you can easily identify what are the good point and which one you need to discuss more with your supplier. With data privacy, more and more regulation are putting strict regulation regarding cross-border data transfer. So you need also to map your supplier and their subcontractor in terms of location. For example, you may have a business colleague who will tell you, don't worry, it's a Swiss company, you can work securely with it. But if you dig in, you will see that the Swiss supplier is in fact using a European solution, which is a software as a service-based solution. And this third party is already using another company, an IT infrastructure in Germany, for example, and this company is using a cloud service which has extension to the US. So you have to be very careful about where your data is stored and used by who. There is a famous phrase, trust no one. This is valid for security, so you need evidences, okay? Because one major point is that audit people may ask you for this evidence. So you need to get certification, hardware, software inventory to be sure that the software people are using, operating system are not obsolete. Okay, you must have data privacy agreement in place in case you have private data involved in the different processes. Potentially, you can also perform or ask to perform an audit, physical audit, or, for example, a penetration testing of your supplier facilities. As we saw before in one of the pyramids, one aspect is the business continuity. You should not forget about it. Business continuity could be a subject for a full presentation. This is not the goal today. So as a key point, I will just remember that you have to define typically the recovery point objective, the recovery time objective. This must be agreed and part of the contract. For critical third party, you must ask them their latest BCP exercise result. They have to do that on a yearly basis, so they are obliged to provide you with such information. As mentioned previously, no one is perfect. So you need to build your exit plan. Exit plan for critical supplier must be part of the contract. In particular, you must ensure that your supplier will support you during the migration. You don't want that once you tell him that you are going away, he'll say, okay, fine, good luck. Okay, so he has to support you during the migration. Also, you need to define sufficient time to do the migration. If the service is easy to migrate, it can be done in few months. But if you take, for example, a credit card supplier, it can take easily 1 year. Last but not least, money. So you need also to clarify the potential costs which will be related to this migration. And now a subject I would like to address is cyber insurance. And this is linked to risk management. So what can you do with a risk? You can accept it, mitigate it, which we are all trying to do. People might say avoid, and definitely this is not an option. You should not consider avoiding a risk, playing the ostrich. So the third solution you have is to transfer the risk. And how you do that? You can use cyber insurance. Cyber insurance allows you to cover what is called residual risk. You have to remember that the cybersecurity accident can be very expensive. It can, in particular, last longer than expected. I mean, you see production line down for days, sometimes weeks. Even recently, the stock exchange in New Zealand was stuck for 4 days. If you refer to a recent US survey, I mean, in terms of claims, ransomware was the major threat with 31% of the claims. And just for information, the average ransom demand is currently around $300,000. Then there was fund transfer fraud, and the third one was email compromise with phishing and so on. So some takeaways to finalize my presentation. Nothing and no one is 100% secure. Suppliers multiply your attack surface. You can start your third-party evaluation with simple 7 steps, which are on my presentation. And security is not a one-time shot, it's a continuous process. I would like to thank you all for attending my presentation. I would like again to thank you, CLUSIS, for this opportunity. And finally, à bientôt, bis bald. À presto, à bien beau. Thank you.